My ex-wife's stepfather made my life miserable because I escaped to another country. Hey, Reddit, I never thought I'd be posting here, but my life has become such a mess that I really need some advice. I guess I should start from the beginning. My name is Jake, I'm 28, and I've been married to my wife, Emily, for 5 years. We have a beautiful daughter, Lily, who just turned 3. I thought we had a pretty good life together. Emily is gorgeous, smart, and charming, everything I could ever want in a partner. But lately, things have been off. Emily comes from a wealthy family. Her father, Richard, is a self-made millionaire who built his wealth in real estate. He's always been a bit of a control freak and not very supportive of our marriage. Richard never thought I was good enough for Emily, and he made that clear from day one. Despite this, I worked hard to prove myself and earn his respect, but it always felt like a losing battle. Richard remarried about 2 years ago to a woman named Lisa, who is 10 years younger than him. Lisa is stunning and always had a bit of a flirty vibe, but I never paid much attention to it. I figured she was just trying to fit into the family and make everyone feel comfortable. Little did I know how wrong I was. The trouble started about 6 months ago when Emily began acting distant. She was always on her phone, texting late into the night, and seemed more interested in her social life than spending time with Lily and me. Whenever I asked her about it, she brushed me off, saying I was being paranoid and insecure. I wanted to trust her, so I let it go. But then, strange things began happening. Emily would go out with friends and come back late smelling like expensive cologne. She started buying new clothes, lingerie that I never saw her wear at home, and always seemed to have a reason not to be intimate with me. I felt like I was losing her, and I didn't know why. I confided in my best friend, Matt, who suggested I do something I never thought I'd do: check her phone. I was desperate to know the truth, so one night while Emily was asleep, I took her phone and went through her messages. What I found shattered my world. There were texts from a contact saved as Mr. X. The messages were explicit and detailed their various rendezvous. My heart sank when I realized that Mr. X was none other than her stepfather, Richard. I couldn't believe what I was reading. The man who had always looked down on me was the one betraying me with my own wife. I felt a mix of anger, hurt, and confusion. How could she do this to me, to our family, and with her own stepfather? It was too much to process. I confronted Emily the next day, and at first, she denied everything. But when I showed her the messages, she broke down and confessed. She said it started as a way to get back at Richard for being so controlling, but it quickly spiraled out of control. Emily begged for forgiveness, swearing it was over and that she wanted to make things right. She claimed she still loved me and that our family meant everything to her. I wanted to believe her, but the betrayal was too deep. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. In the midst of all this, I had to figure out how to protect Lily. She was my priority, and I didn't want her to grow up in a toxic environment. I decided to move out and stay with Matt while I figured out my next steps. Emily was devastated, but she agreed it was for the best. I also had to deal with Richard. Confronting him was one of the hardest things I've ever done. He didn't deny the affair and actually had the audacity to blame me, saying I drove Emily to it by being so mediocre. It took all my strength not to punch him in the face. Instead, I told him to stay away from my family and that I would be seeking legal action. As if things couldn't get worse, Lisa found out about the affair and blamed me for it. She claimed I was the reason Richard strayed, saying I was a bad influence and a homewrecker. The irony was almost laughable. Here I was trying to pick up the pieces of my broken life, and she was adding more fuel to the fire. Over the next few weeks, things were tense. Emily and I went to counseling, but every session felt like ripping open a fresh wound. I could see she was trying, but I couldn't shake the image of her with Richard. The trust was gone, and without it, our relationship felt hollow. One night I was at Matt's place when I got a call from Emily. She was hysterical, saying Richard had shown up drunk and tried to force himself on her. She managed to get away and lock herself in the bathroom, but she was terrified. I rushed over, not knowing what I would find. When I got there, Richard was gone, and Emily was a mess. She was shaking, crying, and kept apologizing. I held her, not knowing what else to do. Despite everything, I still cared for her, and seeing her like that broke my heart. We called the police, but Richard had already left. They took our statements and promised to look into it, but I wasn't holding my breath. Richard had connections, and I knew he would find a way to wriggle out of this. In the days that followed, Emily and I grew closer again. The trauma of Richard's attack seemed to bring us together, and for a moment I thought we might have a chance. But then, another bombshell dropped. Emily discovered she was pregnant. Given the timing, there was a real possibility that the baby could be Richard's. The news hit me like a freight train. I wanted to be there for Emily, but the thought of raising Richard's child was too much. We decided to do a paternity test as soon as possible, but the waiting was torture. During this time, I leaned heavily on Matt and my sister Sarah, who was my rock. She helped me navigate the legal aspects of the situation and provided much-needed emotional support. I also started seeing a therapist to help me process everything. It was all so overwhelming, and I needed to make sure I was strong for Lily. When the results finally came in, they confirmed my worst fear: the baby was Richard's. I felt like my entire world was crumbling around me. Emily was devastated and begged me not to leave her, but I couldn't stay. I loved Lily with all my heart, but I knew I couldn't be a father to Richard's child. I filed for divorce and sought full custody of Lily. Emily fought me on it, but eventually we came to an agreement. She would get visitation rights, but Lily would live with me. It was a small victory, but it felt hollow. My family was torn apart, and there was no going back. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I moved into a new apartment, started a new job, and poured all my energy into being the best father I could be for Lily. Emily gave birth to a baby boy, and while I didn't want any contact with him, I made sure Lily had a relationship with her half-brother. It wasn't his fault, and I didn't want him to suffer for the sins of his parents. Richard, meanwhile, faced his own consequences. Lisa filed for divorce, and his reputation took a hit. He tried to maintain his control over the family, but his influence was waning. I took solace in knowing that he would face some form of justice, even if it wasn't enough. Now, as I sit here writing this, I'm still picking up the pieces. Some days are better than others, but I'm learning to move forward. I've started dating again, though it's hard to let my guard down. Trust doesn't come easily after everything I've been through. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm determined to make a better life for Lily and myself. This experience has taught me a lot about resilience, forgiveness, and the importance of self-worth. I may have been broken, but I'm slowly putting myself back together. In the midst of all this chaos, my relationship with my own family became strained. My parents were supportive but deeply disappointed by everything that had transpired. They were particularly hurt by Emily's betrayal, as they had welcomed her into our family with open arms. My mother, who had always adored Emily, felt a profound sense of betrayal and sorrow. It was heartbreaking to see her so affected by our marital issues. My father, on the other hand, was more practical. He helped me with legal advice and supported me in seeking custody of Lily. He was determined to see me through this and ensure that I came out stronger on the other side. He often reminded me that life is full of challenges, but it's how we respond to them that defines our character. His words of wisdom were a source of strength during this difficult time. I also reconnected with old friends who I had lost touch with over the years. Their support and understanding were invaluable. They provided a sense of normalcy and reminded me that life goes on, despite the chaos. My high school friend Mark, who had gone through a similar situation, became a great source of comfort and advice. He shared his experiences and how he had managed to rebuild his life, which gave me hope that I could do the same. Emily's family, particularly her mother, was in denial about the whole situation. They couldn't believe that their perfect daughter could be involved in such a scandal. Emily's mother even accused me of fabricating the affair to gain sympathy and custody of Lily. It was disheartening, but I knew I had to. After the divorce was finalized and custody of Lily was secured, I decided I needed a fresh start. The pain of betrayal and the constant reminders of Emily and Richard in my life were too much to bear. I realized that to truly heal and move forward, I had to leave everything behind: my job, my home, my friends, and start anew somewhere far away. I had always dreamed of living abroad, and now seemed like the perfect time to make that dream a reality. I researched various countries and finally settled on Spain. The idea of warm weather, beautiful landscapes, and a slower pace of life appealed to me. Plus, Spain had a good education system and was generally safe, which was crucial for Lily's well-being. After weeks of preparation, I booked our tickets and started the process of moving. It was a whirlwind of packing, selling off furniture, and saying goodbye to family and friends. Matt and Sarah were particularly supportive, helping me with the logistics and offering emotional support. My parents, although sad to see us go, understood my need for a fresh start and promised to visit us often. The day of our departure was filled with a mix of emotions, excitement, anxiety, and a touch of sadness. As we boarded the plane, I looked at Lily and felt a surge of hope. This move was for her as much as it was for me. I wanted to give her a chance at a happy, stable life away from the toxicity of our past. The flight to Spain was long, but Lily was a trooper. She slept through most of it, and when she was awake, she was fascinated by the view from the window. I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and relief. We were finally on our way to a new beginning. Upon arriving in Spain, we settled in a picturesque town on the coast called Marbella. It was known for its beautiful beaches, friendly locales, and a vibrant expat community. I found a cozy apartment near the beach with a small garden where Lily could play. It felt like a dream come true. Our first few weeks in Marbella were spent adjusting to the new environment. I enrolled Lily in a local preschool, and she quickly made friends despite the language barrier. Children have a remarkable way of connecting with each other, and Lily was no exception. Seeing her happy and thriving gave me the motivation I needed to make our new life work. I also started taking Spanish classes to integrate better into the community. It was challenging at first, but I gradually improved. The locals were patient and encouraging, which made the learning process enjoyable. I found a job teaching English at a language school, which allowed me to support us financially while giving me time to spend with Lily. One of the highlights of our new life was meeting Sophia. She was a fellow teacher at the language school, originally from Argentina. Sophia was warm, kind, and had a vibrant energy that was contagious. We bonded over our love for travel, good food, and the shared experience of starting anew in a foreign country. Sophia and I started spending more time together, both in and out of work. We explored the local markets, tried different restaurants, and took long walks on the beach. Lily adored her, and they quickly formed a close bond. Sophia's presence brought a sense of joy and stability that I hadn't felt in a long time. As our relationship deepened, Sophia opened up about her past. She had moved to Spain after a difficult breakup and had been rebuilding her life ever since. Her strength and resilience were inspiring, and we found solace in each other's company. Slowly but surely, I began to feel hopeful about the future again. However, not everything was as idyllic as it seemed. Richard, my ex-father-in-law, had not taken kindly to the divorce and the subsequent fallout. His business empire had taken a hit due to the scandal, and his ego was bruised. He blamed me for everything and was determined to make me pay. It started with strange occurrences. My car was vandalized, with the tires slashed and the windows smashed. At first, I thought it was just bad luck, but then other incidents followed. Our apartment was broken into, and although nothing valuable was taken, it was clear that someone had gone through our personal belongings. The feeling of being watched was unsettling, and I couldn't shake the sense of dread that loomed over us. One evening, as Sophia and I were having dinner at a local restaurant, I noticed a man staring at us from across the room. He was dressed in a suit, which seemed out of place in the casual beachfront setting. His gaze was cold and intense, and when our eyes met, he didn't look away. I mentioned it to Sophia, but she brushed it off, saying it was probably nothing. But it wasn't nothing. The next day, I received a threatening note under my apartment door. It was written in Spanish, but the message was clear. "You can't run from your past. We will find you." Panic set in, and I realized that Richard had sent his people to track us down. I contacted the local police, but they were of little help. Without concrete evidence, there wasn't much they could do. They advised me to be cautious and report any further incidents. Feeling vulnerable and exposed, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I reached out to an old friend, Carlos, whom I had met during my Spanish classes. Carlos was a former police officer who had retired to Marbella. He was well-connected and had a reputation for getting things done. When I explained the situation, he agreed to help me. Carlos started by looking into the man from the restaurant. His contacts in the local law enforcement provided some leads, and it turned out the man was a private investigator from the UK, hired by Richard to keep tabs on me. Carlos suggested we lay low for a while and avoid drawing attention to ourselves. Despite our efforts to stay under the radar, the harassment continued. One night, as we were returning home from a weekend trip, we found our apartment in disarray. Someone had broken in again, but this time they left a clear message. Scrawled on the wall in red paint were the words, "Leave or else." Fearful for our safety, I decided it was time to leave Marbella. With Carlos' help, we made arrangements to move to a more secluded village inland. The village, called Ronda, was nestled in the mountains and offered a peaceful retreat away from the prying eyes of Richard's henchmen. The move was exhausting, both physically and emotionally. Lily was confused and scared, and Sophia tried her best to keep her spirits up. The sense of being hunted was overwhelming, but I knew we had to keep going. Our safety depended on it. Ronda turned out to be a hidden gem. The village was picturesque, with whitewashed houses, narrow cobblestone streets, and breathtaking views of the surrounding mountains. The locals were friendly and welcoming, and it didn't take long for us to feel at home. We found a small house to rent on the outskirts of the village, surrounded by olive groves and vineyards. It was a stark contrast to the bustling coastal life of Marbella, but the tranquility was exactly what we needed. Lily started at a new preschool, and I continued teaching English online, which allowed me to work from home and stay close to her. Sophia and I spent our days exploring the countryside, hiking in the mountains, and enjoying the simple pleasures of village life. The constant fear began to fade, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. Just as we were beginning to settle into our new life, the unthinkable happened. One evening, while Sophia and I were having dinner on our terrace, we heard a noise coming from the garden. At first, we thought it was just an animal, but then we saw the shadow of a man moving among the trees. I grabbed a flashlight and went to investigate. My heart was pounding as I approached the figure, but when I shone the light on him, he bolted. I chased him through the garden and into the olive groves, but he was too fast. When I returned to the house, Sophia was on the phone with Carlos reporting the incident. Carlos arrived within the hour, along with two of his trusted friends. They searched the property and found footprints leading to the main road, but there was no sign of the intruder. Carlos assured us that he would stay with us for a few days to keep an eye on things. The next morning, Carlos received a call from one of his contacts. They had identified the intruder as one of Richard's hired thugs sent to intimidate me into returning to the UK. Carlos decided it was time to confront Richard directly. He contacted Richard's private investigator and arranged a meeting. Carlos, Sophia, and I drove to a nearby town where the meeting was set to take place. We arrived at a small cafe, and there, sitting at a corner table, was the private investigator. He looked surprised to see us, but maintained his composure. Carlos wasted no time in laying out the facts. He presented evidence of the harassment and made it clear that we knew who was behind it. He warned the investigator that any further attempts to threaten or harm us would be met with legal action and, if necessary, self-defense. The investigator, realizing the seriousness of the situation, agreed to relay the message to Richard. For a few weeks, things seemed to calm down. There were no more break-ins, no threatening messages, and no sightings of suspicious figures lurking around our home. Carlos continued to check in on us regularly, and we gradually began to relax. During this time, my relationship with Sophia blossomed. We grew even closer, finding comfort and strength in each other. Lily adored her, and the three of us started to feel like a real family. We celebrated holidays together, went on trips, and created beautiful memories. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Richard was a man who didn't take kindly to being defied, and I suspected he was biding his time, waiting for the right moment to strike. Just when things seemed to be settling down, Emily decided to re-enter the picture. She had been relatively quiet after the divorce, but I knew better than to trust her silence. One day, I received an unexpected phone call from my lawyer back in the UK. Emily had filed a motion to re-evaluate the custody arrangement, claiming that I had abducted Lily and taken her to Spain without proper consent. This was a blatant lie. The custody agreement had allowed me to take Lily anywhere, as long as I informed Emily of our whereabouts. I had done everything by the book, but Emily was determined to make my life difficult. She claimed that Lily was not safe with me and that she wanted her daughter back in the UK. The timing of her move was suspicious, to say the least. It was clear that she and Richard were working together to force me back to the UK. If I lost the custody battle, I would have to return, and they could easily gain control over Lily again. I contacted my lawyer in Spain and explained the situation. He assured me that we had a strong case, but the process would be long and stressful. We gathered all the necessary documents to prove that I had full legal rights to have Lily with me in Spain. Emily's actions infuriated me. She had been a negligent mother, more interested in her affair and social life than in caring for Lily. Now she wanted to take her away from me out of spite. It was a bitter reminder of the person she had become. The trial date was set, and I had to prepare myself for the battle ahead. Sophia was a pillar of support during this time. She helped me organize the evidence and provided emotional strength when I felt overwhelmed. Carlos also stepped in, offering to testify about the harassment we had faced from Richard's men. On the day of the trial, we presented our case to the judge. My lawyer laid out all the evidence, including the threats and harassment we had endured. Carlos' testimony was particularly compelling. He detailed the break-ins, the threatening notes, and the intruders who had come after us. His credibility as a former police officer added weight to our case. Emily, on the other hand, painted herself as the concerned mother who had been wronged. She claimed that I had taken Lily away without her consent and that I was putting her in danger by living in a foreign country. It was infuriating to hear her lies, but I remained calm, knowing that the truth was on my side. After days of testimony and deliberation, the judge delivered the verdict. The court ruled in my favor, stating that I had acted within my legal rights and that Lily was safe and well cared for in Spain. Emily's motion was dismissed, and she was warned against making further false claims. The relief was overwhelming. The threat of losing Lily had been a constant source of anxiety, and now it was finally over. I could focus on building our new life without the fear of Emily or Richard trying to tear it apart. One night, as I was putting Lily to bed, I heard a commotion outside. Sophia and Carlos were in the living room, and I rushed to see what was happening. Through the window, I saw a group of men approaching the house. They were armed and looked menacing. Carlos quickly locked the doors and windows and told us to stay inside. He grabbed his phone and called for backup, but we knew it would take time for help to arrive. The men began banging on the doors, shouting threats and demanding that I come out. I felt a surge of fear and anger. I couldn't let them hurt my family. Carlos handed me a baseball bat, and we prepared to defend ourselves. Sophia took Lily and hid in the bedroom, trying to keep her calm. The men managed to break down the front door and stormed into the house. Carlos and I fought them off as best as we could, but they outnumbered us. Just when things seemed dire, the sound of sirens filled the air. Carlos' friends had arrived along with the local police. The intruders, realizing they were outmatched, fled the scene. The police managed to apprehend a few of them, and we later learned that they were indeed hired by Richard. The authorities took our statements and assured us that they would handle the situation. The ordeal was finally over. Richard was arrested and faced charges for harassment, conspiracy, and assault. His influence and power were no match for the legal system, and he was sentenced to prison. The nightmare that had plagued us for so long had come to an end. With Richard out of the picture, we were finally able to breathe easy. Carlos and his friends continued to keep an eye on us, but the threat was gone. Sophia and I decided to stay in Ronda, embracing the peaceful life we had found. Our love grew stronger with each passing day, and I found a sense of happiness and fulfillment that I had thought was lost forever. Lily thrived in her new environment, and I was grateful for the fresh start we had been given. I learned that no matter how dark and difficult things may seem, there is always hope. Life may throw challenges our way, but it's how we face them that defines who we are. I was broken, but with the support of those I loved, I managed to rebuild my life and find joy once again.